Have you ever felt like your time was being wasted by someone you cared about most? I thought I was just meeting a friend for lunch, but a simple afternoon turned into a tense lesson about boundaries, respect, and guilt. You won't believe what happened next. The sun was slicing through the tall glass windows of the casual downtown cafe, casting streaks of golden light onto the tables inside. I was sitting in my car just outside, gripping my phone and occasionally glancing at the clock. Jam 12, lewat 55 menit. PM. The little digital numbers felt like a countdown, a gentle but persistent nagging in my mind. I had known this day would be challenging, though not because of anything extraordinary. It was simply lunch with my friend, someone I cared about deeply, but who had a habit of being late. You see, he was always late. Not 5 minutes, not 10, sometimes 20, 30, even 45 minutes. And each time, I felt that same mixture of exasperation and fondness. I cherished our friendship, truly, but the habitual lateness gnawed at me. I had read online somewhere that the healthiest way to deal with chronic lateness was to let the late person be late while you maintain your own schedule. Today, I was determined to do just that. At 12:50, a text appeared on my phone. Hey man, running all over town. Might be about 20 minutes late. I exhaled slowly, setting the phone down. My resolve held firm. I would wait, but only on my terms. Today, my time, my energy, my boundaries mattered. The cafe was alive with the gentle hum of conversation, the clink of silverware against plates, and the subtle hiss of the espresso machine in the corner. From inside my car, I watched people pass by, cars drift along the street, sunlight bouncing off windshields. Every minute stretched, elongating my anticipation and mild irritation. But I reminded myself, patience was part of this experiment. By 1:15, I spotted him finally, sprinting across the street, a little frazzled, hands in his pockets, hair slightly tousled from the wind. Relief washed over me, mingled with an undercurrent of tension. He had arrived, but I knew this lunch would not be just about food. It would be about boundaries, respect, and the subtle power struggles that often hide beneath friendship. We stepped into the cafe, and I noticed how every detail seemed amplified by the earlier tension. The smell of coffee, slightly burnt at the edges, mixed with the scent of baked goods. The wooden floorboards creaked softly as we walked past tables filled with laughing groups. I kept my pace measured, deliberately controlled, while he fumbled with the door, muttering apologies under his breath. Sorry. Man, traffic was insane, he said, still catching his breath. It's okay, I replied, keeping my tone even neutral. Inside, my mind was cataloguing everything. The hurried gestures, the faint scent of cologne, the slight redness in his cheeks from the run. My inner voice whispered reminders: stay calm, maintain your boundaries, don't let the lateness dictate your mood. We found our table near the window. I could feel the sun warming my shoulders, hear snippets of conversation from other tables. Every little noise seemed sharper, as if my senses had been heightened by the simmering anticipation. As he sat down, I noticed how he avoided eye contact for a moment, probably sensing the tension I hadn't even tried to hide. We ordered. I asked for a small salad and a glass of water, wanting something light, something to keep the rhythm controlled. He ordered his usual, a hearty sandwich and soda. As we waited, our conversation was polite, surface-level chatter about work, the weekend, nothing deep. But beneath it, both of us were walking a tightrope of unspoken expectations. I could feel my pulse quickening as minutes passed. The first sign of discomfort in him, the tapping of a finger, a slight shifting in his seat, spoke volumes. He was aware he had disrupted our rhythm, and I was aware of how I had deliberately chosen not to adjust mine. The tension was silent but palpable. Food arrived. The salad looked crisp, the sandwich perfectly stacked. I thanked the server and began eating at a measured pace. He dug in immediately, perhaps to distract himself from the awkwardness between us. I kept glancing at my watch. 1:35 now. He had arrived 20 minutes late, exactly as he texted. I reminded myself this was part of the lesson. I was showing him, gently but firmly, that my time was valuable. He spoke intermittently, making small jokes, laughing at little observations. Yet every laugh seemed slightly tense, forced. I noticed it, catalogued it internally, but chose not to comment. Instead, I focused on maintaining my calm, enjoying the moment, and silently reinforcing the lesson. The act of eating, something usually mundane, became layered with meaning. Each bite was a subtle assertion. I can enjoy this lunch on my own terms, even if you arrived late. Every sip of water, every forkful of salad, a gentle reminder that my boundaries were intact. There were moments when I caught him watching me, perhaps trying to gauge whether I was genuinely upset or just practicing stoic patience. I stayed neutral, neither confirming nor denying the tension. It was a silent dance of psychology, a test of awareness, empathy, and personal limits. A few minutes after finishing, I called the server back, requesting the check and a to-go box for my remaining food. My friend looked up, surprised. "Why are you leaving already?" he asked. "I have another commitment," I said simply. "I need to make it on time, so I'll take the rest to go." He seemed momentarily flustered, then tried to explain himself. "If I had known you had somewhere else to be, I would have been here on time. Traffic, running errands." I listened. Nod, neutral expression, inside a whirl of reflection. He was apologetic, but the lesson was already in place. My boundaries were set. The time we had together was respected by me, not dictated by his lateness. As we stepped out of the cafe, I felt a mix of relief and subtle tension. Relief, because the lunch had ended without confrontation. Tension, because friendship always comes with negotiation, compromise, and, sometimes, uncomfortable honesty. Walking to my car, I thought about how this moment would resonate in future interactions. About the conversations I would have with my children someday. About teaching them the value of time and respect. About knowing when to be firm yet compassionate. Today's lunch was more than just food. It was a lesson in boundaries, patience, and self-respect, quietly delivered, memorably learned, asterisk. We had just left the cafe when the air felt heavier. The city's sounds, honking horns, chatter from sidewalk tables. The occasional wail of a distant siren mixed into a subtle background hum, framing the silent tension between us. My friend, normally so easygoing and charming, seemed awkward, hesitant to speak first. "Look, I'm really sorry for being late," he finally said, shoving his hands into his pockets. "I know you were waiting, and I just lost track of time." I nodded, keeping my tone neutral. "It's not the apology that matters, it's whether you'll respect my time in the future." But those words stayed unspoken. I had made a conscious choice. Today, I would assert my boundaries without letting anger or guilt dictate my actions. The walk to the car was slightly uncomfortable. I noticed small gestures, him fidgeting with the strap of his bag, glancing nervously at the passing crowd. Each movement conveyed a subtle awareness that he had crossed a line, and now the consequences were being felt not through punishment, but through quiet observation and controlled detachment. As I drove, I kept the conversation light, talking about mundane topics like traffic patterns, local events, and weekend plans. Yet, beneath each sentence was a silent negotiation of power and respect. Who controls the rhythm of interaction? Who sets the boundaries? I could see him processing every word, every gesture. His eyes darted occasionally to the rearview mirror, perhaps reflecting on his own habitual lateness. The quiet moments between our sentences were telling. I wasn't angry, but I wasn't ignoring the impact of his actions either. There's a peculiar power in calm detachment. He had expected some kind of reaction, frustration, irritation, perhaps a sarcastic remark, but there was nothing, just composure. I was holding the line, silently communicating that my time and energy were not negotiable commodities. Later, we found ourselves in a neutral space, his apartment, a small park, or just the car parked by a scenic overlook. This was the moment where confrontation could no longer be avoided, though it wasn't explosive. I really do feel bad about making you wait, he said, avoiding eye contact at first, then finally meeting mine. I would have come on time if I'd known you had somewhere else afterward. I nodded slowly. That's exactly why I try to set boundaries. It's not about punishing you, it's about respecting my own time and energy. We can't just bend the clock around someone's lateness. He leaned back, exhaling sharply. I know, it's just. I didn't realize it mattered so much. His tone wavered between sincerity and defensiveness. I didn't mean to make you feel like your time isn't important. This moment was crucial. It wasn't about winning or losing, it was about mutual recognition of the problem. I could feel the tension slowly release, replaced by a mixture of relief, self-assertion, and lingering unease. After the conversation, I drove home alone. The city lights flickered across the windshield, reflecting the internal dialogue racing through my mind. Part of me felt guilty. Am I too harsh? Am I overreacting? Another part of me felt empowered. No, this is necessary. Setting boundaries is not selfish. I reflected on past patterns, how many times I had let habitual lateness go unchecked, and how it eroded trust and respect over time. Today had been different. Today I had quietly, firmly, and consciously enforced my limits without hostility or drama. But a new thought emerged, sharp and unsettling. If I feel this tension with a friend, what will happen when it's someone I truly care for, like my future children? How do I balance love with discipline, compassion with firmness? As I parked in my driveway, the air cool against my skin, I realized this lunch was more than just a meal. It was a lesson in human behavior, patience, and the subtle art of communication. A lesson that would echo far beyond a single afternoon, shaping how I interact with people, value my own time, and teach respect through action rather than words alone. The following morning, I woke up with the memory of yesterday's lunch pressing heavily on my mind. Even though the confrontation had been calm, the tension still lingered. I brewed a cup of coffee, the bitter aroma filling my small kitchen, and sat by the window, watching the city wake up. Cars crawled slowly through the morning traffic. People scuttled down sidewalks, clutching their coffee cups. And somewhere in the distance, a bus screeched to a stop. I reflected on the conversation. His apology had been sincere, yet there was a stubborn reluctance in him, a subtle defense mechanism. It made me question, did he truly understand the consequences of his chronic lateness, or was this just another fleeting moment of guilt? I remembered the exact way he had shifted in his seat at the cafe, the slight tension in his voice, the repeated glances at my watch. Those tiny gestures had spoken louder than any words. I realized that while the lunch had been a lesson for him, it was also a lesson for me, a reminder that setting boundaries is never easy, even with those you love. Later that afternoon, we planned to meet again for coffee. I decided to test myself. Could I remain composed if he arrived late once more? By 2 p.m., I was seated at the small table near the window of a cozy cafe. My notebook lay open in front of me. Though I wasn't really writing, I was observing the movements of people around me, listening to the low hum of conversation, the clatter of cups, and the occasional laughter. At 2:15, a familiar text appeared. "Hey, running behind again, sorry. Should be there in 10. I exhaled slowly. Inside, a part of me bristled, but another part remained calm. I reminded myself, this is the real test. Do I let his habits control me, or do I maintain my composure? By 2:25, he walked in, slightly flustered, a sheepish grin on his face. "Sorry," he said, sliding into the chair across from me. Traffic was worse than I thought. I smiled faintly, nodding. "It's okay. Let's just enjoy our coffee." Even as I spoke, my mind catalogued the internal battle: patience versus irritation, compassion versus self-respect. This was the subtle war that defined friendships, especially when boundaries were at stake. After a few minutes of small talk, I decided it was time for honesty. "Listen," I began, "I care about you, and I love spending time with you. But this pattern of being late, it affects me more than you probably realize." He looked down, a frown forming. "I know," he admitted. "I don't mean to make things difficult. I get caught up. I lose track of time." "It's not just about losing track of time," I said. "It's about respect for my time, my energy, and for the plans we make together. When you're consistently late, it communicates that those things don't matter to you." He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I get it, and I want to do better. I really do. But it's hard to change habits that have been part of me for so long." This moment was raw and honest. It wasn't an argument. It was a confrontation of truths that had been simmering beneath the surface. And in that truth, a new level of understanding began to form. Walking back home later that evening, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. Relief because we had spoken honestly, and exhaustion because emotional work always takes its toll. I thought about how easy it would have been to let anger dominate, to silently punish him by withdrawing, to let resentment fester instead. I had chosen clarity. I had communicated my boundaries without malice, and he had heard me. That alone felt like a victory. But the emotional residue remained, the lingering guilt, the subtle worry about whether my firmness might push him away. Sitting on my couch, I reflected on what this meant for my life moving forward. How would I teach these lessons to others, to my future children? How do you instill respect, patience, and self-awareness without creating fear or resentment? I realized that part 3 of this journey wasn't about him, it was about me learning how to balance empathy with firmness, love with personal boundaries. The lunch, the coffee, the conversations, they were all practice for the greater challenges of life. Lessons that extended far beyond a single friendship. Asterisk. The next weekend, we had planned another meeting, this time a casual evening walk along the riverfront. I thought the tension from the previous meetings had mostly dissipated, but as I approached the designated spot, my stomach twisted slightly. I knew that patterns don't change overnight, and habitual behavior has a stubborn persistence. By 6:10 p.m., I spotted him emerging from the parking lot, hands in pockets, hurried steps betraying his awareness that he might already be late. I had made a mental note. I would not show impatience, no visible frustration. My goal wasn't to punish him, but to uphold the boundaries I had set for myself. "Hey, sorry," he said breathlessly. "I didn't leave early enough from home." I nodded, offering a faint smile. "It's okay. Let's just enjoy the evening," even as we walked side by side along the river. A part of me remained alert, every gesture, every hesitation, every glance at the sunset or the path ahead could carry unspoken signals of his awareness of my expectations. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, casting orange and purple hues over the water, the conversation turned serious. He asked about my thoughts after the last coffee meeting. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," he admitted. "I don't want to disrespect your time, I really don't, but changing habits is hard." I paused, taking a deep breath. "I understand that. This isn't about punishment. It's about respect. Respect for me, respect for our friendship, and respect for the promises we make to each other." He looked down, kicking at a small stone on the pathway. "I guess I never realized how much it mattered to you," he said quietly. This moment was tense. Not angry, not hostile, just the raw weight of realization. A friendship hanging in balance, tethered between empathy and firmness. I could feel the emotional stakes rising, a silent crescendo in the rhythm of our walk. We stopped near a bench overlooking the river. I gestured for him to sit. The air was still, save for the distant sound of water lapping against the embankment. "I'm telling you this because I care," I said, "and because I value our friendship. But boundaries aren't negotiable, they're necessary for healthy relationships. You've tested mine, yes, but I'm trying to show you that respect and time go hand in hand." He nodded slowly, taking in my words. "I think I finally understand," he said. "It's not just about being late. It's about recognizing how my actions affect you and others, and I want to do better. I really do." For the first time, I sensed a shift in him, a recognition that was genuine, not just reactive. A small but significant victory the lesson had landed. And in that quiet moment, I realized that growth often comes from repeated awareness and consistent boundaries, not arguments or anger. As we resumed walking, the city lights shimmering in the distance, I felt a calmness settle over me. I had maintained my boundaries, communicated my expectations clearly, and witnessed the beginning of change in someone I cared about. I reflected on the weeks of lunch meetings, coffee dates, and walks. Each encounter had been a microcosm of human interaction, a delicate balance between patience and assertiveness, compassion and firmness. I realized that friendship is not just about affection, it's about mutual respect and accountability. By the time we parted ways, I felt a sense of closure. Not in a finality that ends the friendship, but in a deeper understanding of how to navigate relationships with honesty, empathy, and firmness. Driving home later that night, I thought about the lessons I would carry into the future, especially with my children, teaching them that their time and energy are valuable, that boundaries are essential, and that love and respect are intertwined with discipline and self-awareness. This was more than a series of lunches and walks. It was a journey in understanding human behavior, learning to communicate boundaries effectively, and embracing the sometimes uncomfortable truths that sustain meaningful relationships. Asterisk. The days after our riverfront conversation were quieter, slower. The city hummed on, oblivious to the subtle dramas of our lives. I found myself reflecting often on the lessons learned, not just about my friend, but about human interaction in general. I realized that friendship is a negotiation of respect, time, and understanding. People aren't perfect. They make mistakes, sometimes repeatedly, and yet it is possible to guide them toward awareness without losing your own sense of self. Sitting on my balcony one evening, the city lights flickering below, I thought about how often we let habitual behaviors go unchecked, rationalizing them in the name of love or friendship. The lunches, the coffee dates, the walks, they weren't just social activities. They were microcosms of life lessons, opportunities to assert values, and moments to teach empathy and respect. I began to notice how much energy we unconsciously expend on others when we do not enforce our boundaries. Each interaction with my chronically late friend had been a chance to practice patience, assertiveness, and self-respect. Boundaries, I realized, aren't walls, they're guidelines for healthy interaction. By setting them clearly, we communicate not only our expectations, but also our value as human beings. My friend's habitual lateness had unintentionally taught me this crucial lesson. Time is a gift, and respecting it is a form of love. Even in moments of frustration, I felt gratitude. Gratitude that the situation allowed me to grow emotionally, mentally, and relationally. Gratitude that I could model the behavior I hoped to instill in others, especially in future relationships and with my children. Life, I realized, is full of friend lunches in different forms, work meetings, family obligations, parenting responsibilities, and social commitments. Each requires a balance of empathy, assertiveness, and patience. I envisioned future scenarios where these lessons would apply. A child not listening, a coworker disregarding schedules, or a partner miscommunicating. The principle remains the same: clarity, consistency, and compassion. We cannot control the actions of others, but we can control our response, and, in doing so, teach respect and accountability through example. The experiences with my friend were a rehearsal for life's broader challenges. The subtle, sometimes uncomfortable lessons in patience, boundaries, and communication prepared me for bigger, more complex relationships. And the best part, the respect and understanding cultivated were mutual. As I sit here now, recounting this journey, I understand that the lunches, coffees, and walks were never about food, beverages, or casual conversation alone. They were mirrors reflecting human behavior, patience, and personal growth. From this experience, I take away several lasting lessons. Your time is valuable. Protect it without guilt. Boundaries are necessary. They preserve respect in relationships. Empathy and firmness can coexist. Love does not mean sacrificing your principles. Consistency teaches lessons. Change is gradual and requires modeling behavior. Reflection fosters growth. Every interaction is an opportunity to learn about yourself and others. The friendship remains, strengthened by honesty and clarity. I feel gratitude for the journey and a quiet confidence that these lessons will echo throughout the rest of my life, guiding interactions, shaping relationships, and teaching those around me the subtle art of respecting time, space, and humanity itself. As I walked away that evening, the city lights reflecting softly on the pavement, I felt a quiet sense of clarity. This wasn't just about a friend being let it was about learning to honor my own time, assert my boundaries, and communicate with honesty and compassion. Friendships, relationships, and life itself aren't perfect, but we can choose how we show up, how we respect others, and how we protect our own energy in the end. The lesson was simple but profound. Respect your time, value your boundaries, and love wisely. That's the kind of wisdom I hope to carry into every connection, every challenge, and every conversation yet to come.